Real estate words and terms with meanings and examples, part number 16. HARP, Home Affordable Refinance Program, which means a federal program that helped homeowners refinance their mortgages to lower interest rates, even if they owed more than their home's value. For example, many borrowers used HARP to reduce monthly mortgage payments during the housing crisis. Hazard insurance, which means insurance that covers property damage caused by risks like fire, storms, or theft. For instance, the lender required the homeowner to carry hazard insurance before approving the loan. HELOC, Home Equity Line of Credit, which means a revolving credit line that allows homeowners to borrow against the equity in their home. For example, they used a HELOC to fund their kitchen renovation. HERA, Housing and Economic Recovery Act, which means a 2008 law designed to address the housing crisis and stabilize the mortgage market. For instance, HERA created new regulations for lenders and provided assistance to troubled homeowners. Highest and best use, which means the most profitable legal use of a property. For example, the highest and best use of the vacant lot was determined to be a retail shopping center. Holding period, which means the time an investor owns a property before selling it. For instance, the holding period for their rental property was 7 years before they sold it at a profit. Homestead exemption, which means a legal provision that reduces property taxes for homeowners on their primary residence. For example, she applied for a homestead exemption to lower her annual property tax bill. HUD, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, which means a federal agency that oversees national housing programs and policies. For instance, HUD provides funding for affordable housing projects across the country. Implied agency, which means an agency relationship created by the actions of the parties rather than a written agreement. For example, by giving advice and acting on the buyer's behalf, the agent created an implied agency relationship. Imputed interest, which means interest calculated by the IRS on loans with no stated interest or below market rates. For instance, the seller-financed loan had imputed interest applied for tax purposes. Income approach, which means a method of valuing property based on its ability to generate income. For example, the appraiser used the income approach to value the apartment complex. Income property, which means real estate purchased to generate rental income or profits. For instance, their duplex is an income property that brings in steady monthly rent. Ingress, which means the legal right to enter a property. For example, the easement gave the neighbor ingress to their land through the driveway. Interest-only loan, which means a loan where the borrower pays only the interest for a set period before paying principal. For instance, they chose an interest-only loan to keep initial payments low. Investment property, which means real estate bought primarily to earn a return on investment. For example, the beachfront condo was purchased as an investment property to rent to tourists. Involuntary lien, which means a lien placed on a property without the owner's consent, usually due to unpaid debts. For instance, the county placed an involuntary lien for unpaid property taxes. Joint tenancy, which means a form of property ownership where 2 or more people share equal ownership with right of survivorship. For example, the siblings held the family home in joint tenancy. Judicial foreclosure, which means a foreclosure process that goes through the court system. For instance, the lender pursued judicial foreclosure after the borrower defaulted. Jumbo loan limit, which means the maximum loan amount that can still be considered a conforming loan. For example, their mortgage exceeded the jumbo loan limit, so they had to pay a higher interest rate. Key lot, which means a lot that is bordered on 3 sides by other lots, often less desirable for development. For instance, the developer sold the key lot at a discount due to its limited privacy. Kick-out clause, which means a clause allowing a seller to accept a better offer while the current buyer has a set time to remove contingencies. For example, the home was under contract with a kick-out clause, so another buyer could step in. Land lease, which means an agreement where a tenant rents the land but owns the building on it. For instance, they operated their restaurant on a land lease from the city. Landlord, which means the property owner who rents out real estate to tenants. For example, the landlord is responsible for repairing the building's roof. Land trust, which means a legal arrangement where a trustee holds title to property for the benefit of another party. For instance, they place the property in a land trust for privacy and estate planning. Lease agreement, which means a legal contract between a landlord and tenant outlining rental terms. For example, the lease agreement stated the rent amount and payment due date.